Okay, I'm going to start my screen sharing and put the welcome slide here. So the recording is running. Can we accept people in the waiting room?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay. Okay, welcome, bem-vindo. Just a quick note before we begin. The event is held in English and Portuguese, and we are assisted by Deborah Chopinian and Maria Barrera Plasencia, who will translate the event into English and Portuguese. To set the language channel, click Interpretation at the bottom bar of the Zoom application and choose a language, or if you speak English and Portuguese, you can also turn the feature off. Bem-vindo. Este evento será transmitido en inglés y portugués. E para selecionar o idioma, clique no botão Interpretação da barra inferior. Você também pode ouvir as vozes originais desativando o botão Interpretação.
Turn off the interpretation button to listen to the original sound.
This panel is recorded, so we suggest that you turn off your video. Well, let's start with our event. Thank you for joining.
Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all joining in. My name is Nadine Wittlisbach. I'm the director of Photo Museum Winterthur. And because as an institution who is discussing, showing images, we are also very interested about the question of agency, ethical strategies of image making, also in the age of the networked image. So yes, we are very happy that you are here, and I would like to hand over now to Matthias.
Hi, my name is Matthias Pfaller. I'm a photo historian and I'm a museum professional. And in the last summer, in 2021, I worked at Photo Museum Winterthur to assist in the exhibition Claudia Andujar, The Yanomami Struggle. And to expand on the idea of the show, we organized today's panel discussion to talk about the most urgent questions in our media communication, in our cross-cultural media communication. And to be on topic, we of course mention the COVID pandemic, which also gives us the great opportunity to have online meetings or the inspiration to do so. And in the beginning, 2 years ago, the pandemic joined reports of humanitarian and environmental disasters around the world that we in Switzerland and Europe in general learned about through illustrated reports in various media. And while in the first months, the coverage was mostly local, we soon learned about other regions in the world that were affected by the pandemic, such as the Amazon region in Brazil. And we learned about the lack of oxygen for patients in Manaus, in the big city, but also how the pandemic affected local indigenous communities. And while there has been increased attention to the detrimental effects of climate change and neoliberalism in the last decade, this pandemic has really shown us how interconnected we are with seemingly distant regions, and what our life what impact our life has on other people far away. And we get much of this knowledge from photographs. We see newspapers, documentaries, aid campaigns, and exhibitions. They fulfill the purpose of information, but they are also produced and disseminated with certain intentions, and therefore require critical examination. At Fotomuseum Winterthur, it is exactly our mission to inquire about how photography works in our societies, past and present.
Maybe just to give you a very brief insight, the photographs of Claudia Andujar are presented right now at Fotomuseum Winterthur. It's a large-scale retrospective, which goes on through February 13. And it gives rise to discussion about the use of images of indigenous communities in humanitarian aid and the press. Because also Claudia herself moves in various areas with her work as an artist, as a photojournalist, but especially, and I think this is very important to her, as an activist for the rights and recognition of the indigenous Yanomami community in northern Brazil. Her photographs, maybe you haven't, if you haven't come across her work, have appeared in international magazines and served to document vaccination campaigns in the 1980s. Eventually, her stunning images found their way into museums in Brazil and later on in Europe. And due to her close relationship with the indigenous community, she not only gained intimate insights into their lives, but also received permission to use the photographs for political purposes in the interest of the Yanomami. Her work provides an opportunity to look at images of political and humanitarian campaigns and reflect on the duties and challenges of photo activists and organizations today. Therefore, in this discussion, we invite representatives from different parties to talk about the way Brazilian indigenous communities and their struggles are pictured in international media, as well as their very own communication channels. We want to address several questions, such as how are photographs taken of Brazil? Who is photographing whom? How do we in Europe use these images, or also in other parts of the world? And what purposes do they serve? And how do the images ultimately help local indigenous communities and their goals? So we are very happy to introduce our panelists from Brazil and Europe.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
I'm sorry, Kelly, I had a problem with my settings. Just a quick hello. Kelly is going to do her own presentation, and it's great that we can have it right now, and we will introduce our other guests after Kelly's short presentation. So there you go, Kelly.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning to everyone connected in this meeting. My name is Kelly Boni Wajajada. I belong to the Media India. I am in the social media within this network. I'm one of the youth indigenous leadership within my state, which is in Imperatrice of Maranhão. I also participate to the movement of indigenous women Indigenous women of the city were always in the constant and active fight, struggle in seeking our lands and our rights, always trying to improve and to take information to our parents and family throughout our network, which is one of the largest networks known in all over the world, which is the Media India network.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I would like to introduce Eleni Helbling. Hello, Eleni. Eleni is also joining us from outside Europe. And Eleni Helbling is responsible for public fundraising at the Society for Threatened People. The Society for Threatened People is an international human rights organization that supports local efforts to strengthen the human rights of minorities and indigenous communities, and cooperates nationally and internationally with organizations and individuals pursuing similar goals. The society has consultative status with both the UN Economics and Social Council and the Council of Europe. Welcome, Eleni. I would pass directly to Niklas Ennen. Niklas Ennen works as the press officer for the Berlin office of Survival International. Survival International is the global movement for tribal people and fights for their survival. The human rights organization works in partnership with tribal people and gives them a platform to speak to the world and expose existential threats to them, such as racism, land grabbing, forced development, and genocidal violence. In 1989, Survival International was awarded the Right Livelihood Award. Welcome, Niklas.
Yes, welcome also from my side. And Kelly, I would say that because the Society for Threatened Peoples and Survival International are very large organizations that operate in Europe, and many of our viewers might already know them, that you could, Kelly, now start your presentation to talk more about Media India, and then we will jump into our conversation so that we also know more about Media India.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, okay, once again, good morning, everyone. So, we start talking about who we are, how Media India works and operates. So we are a communication channel which initially started with the purpose of strengthening and to be the spokesperson for the indigenous struggle in social media. So this group was created in 2017, and it was created in one of the largest events we have. It is normally held in Brasilia, which is the camp Struggle for Life. We go to the capital city of Brasilia to fight for our rights and for the struggle for the land and the indigenous lives. As we know, nowadays we have to face so many hurdles until we're able to get our goals. As I said, the main goal is to strengthen our struggle, to be a spokesperson in the social media and to take the information what happens within our network. Today, the network has approximately 10 young people. These people come from different places. I am in the Maranhão area. We have people from Mato Grosso, from Brasilia, from the state of Sao Paulo, and we come together with the purpose of working on this project and to add on our dedication, devotion to this project, and also to conquer important places with the agenda and with different themes, which all of them have to do with the indigenous cause, which is the major goal between everything that is going on. It is the indigenous cause. Even in the midst of COVID pandemic, we always struggle to look and to seek the rights of the indigenous cause. So our work has three stages. We have a spatial coverage, which are these largest events where we come together with like assemblies. We also talk to the legislative, executive, and judiciary power. And also we have the indigenous councils and organizations. These are special events and special coverage because we have people from the legal sector. We try to have a more sort of deeper dialogue, and this only happens in a given amount of time, and this happens in these major events like the struggle for life. This event happened last year, and also the struggle for land, and the second protest or parade of indigenous women, which started in June last year, and it lasted until September. We also produce our own content on the fight against the criminalization of indigenous leaders and attacks on forest defenders. That is basically what is more active, and this is basically our content production due to the deforestation in the Amazon region and the killings, the murders of these people who defend our rights. So that's our main focus. But also we work with other different topics like education, culture, healthcare, politics, and we cannot leave these topics aside because it's an important set of topics for people to understand what do we have access to. Do we, indigenous people, have access to these topics, to education, culture, healthcare, politics? So we try to show these topics so that our audience can understand how situation is like in our territories, in our villages. As I said, Media India has this formation of decentralized communication network that produces and disseminates content and agenda which belongs to the indigenous issue in Brazil, respecting the specificities and the peculiarities of each people. So we know each people is different, so we try that everyone sort of understand the same language, regardless the fact that Wajajaras speak differently from the Yanomami people. We try to establish the same language and that we all look for the same and struggle for the same cause, which is the struggle of the indigenous people. Since it is a very large network, it allows this exchange. We organize many workshops and we try to add on many other peoples. We go to the territory and we organize these workshops, learning and teaching really our family and our relatives how to use this tool as a way to raise our voice in our territories. We need this. We need to understand that the education in technology is very complex to get to the territories because of the lack of coverage, lack of connection. So we try to go to the territory to take this information with us. Media India is an independent network. We don't depend on funding from other parties to do our work. We sometimes depend on some projects to manage to get the funds to do the traveling we need to do and to produce our content. But we are not hired, as many people think that we get money from the government. It is not true. It has never happened in our country. It's just a sort of fake news really that we get money from the government to work. It is fake. No, it is not real. And in every chance I have to speak up, I make this very clear. This fake news that the indigenous people receive money from the government, it is a complete lie. So this year we are going to have a new phase in our media, in our social media. So for that we wanted to create new features in a sort of an easy language to be able to get information to other indigenous peoples who are not in our network. So every Mondays we have Recommend Me. This is the first one. Is presented by Regis Wajajara. He's going to talk about some artists, plastic artists, musicians, singers, where people can recommend some relatives so that they can also be featured, and so the world can really get to see that we have also our own artists. So that's what we have created this special sort of aspect. And the second one is respect our sacred. And here we're going to talk about our customs. We're going to talk about how we have the origin of each ethnicity, so people can really understand and respect the beginning of indigenous peoples, because we weren't born in 1988, as the Constitution of Brazil says. So with respect our sacred aspect, we want to show our reality and the reality of the people based on our histories. We also have this other one with Tukuma Pata Show, is the knowledge and the flavors of indigenous people. We're going to teach how to prepare the food as we do, so what we need to eat our typical food. And also we have the curiosity on the indigenous people. There's so many curiosities. How do we sleep? How do we eat? How do we hunt? How do we do our tapestry? So Lydia Wajashara is going to explain these aspects. How do things work in our territory? So yes, we have to tell you that yes, we can also be in different areas of society, and this is more to show them that we can also have access to technology. And also this is like, okay, it is now in the network. So here basically we're going to make a recap, a summary of all the main news of the week. That's what we are going to feature in this program. And then we have another program, which is the Indigenous pathways. He's going to show us, Eric is going to show us the music, which is the meaning of the lyrics. And also we have another program, which is myself. I'm going to be presenting this one, which is Get to Know Our Movement. We're going to talk about the NGOs and the organization like HAPIB and the other ones, COAPI, and we're going to explain which each movement does and how do they work. So basically this is our creation of the different programs for this year. What we need to do is to have future programs. Also, we've launched our website, which is the mediaindia.org. It is already active. You can visit it, and we're going to start doing these things, new things this year. We wanted to do this year because it's a very hot year for politics in Brazil. We want our relatives to really occupy the right space in the Brazilian politic landscape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly, so much for sharing this. I'm super excited. I need to learn Portuguese immediately. I would like to ask you, what role does photographic images play for you and for your organization, and for giving sort of a visual language to your cause and to your fight for your rights? What is a photographic image mean to you?
A photographic image means a lot. It has a lot of meanings. In Brasilia, for instance, photos that we've taken, they look like a war where we are trying to fight for our rights and for people to understand that we were not trying to hurt anyone with bow and arrow. So it has a larger meaning to persevere, for instance. The meaning that we are always fighting, we are firm and fighting for our rights, because if our generation ends today, there will be another generation coming after us fighting as well.
And so you produce new images to show your present reality. And when we thought about this event, we had old images in our heads. We thought about all these, well, as I said, news reports, but also aid campaigns that show always a specific set of images of burning forests, which, well, of course, is still an urgent issue, but it's always the same set, especially children who cannot play, who are dying of hunger. This is what I, for instance, have grown up with, and now it has been changing. And so I come with a lot of stereotypes, and I want to unlearn and unsee these images. And now I want to also address Niklas and Eleni, what type of images they are using, and what kind of stereotypes they also struggle with in their work. So who wants to start? Eleni, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Like you said, it's important to depict the catastrophes happening in the Amazon because this is the reality. And we need to show the world how serious the situation is. And it's a reality that Indigenous communities are facing every day. What we find important is when depicting the communities is to depict them as active members of society who are making use of their agency and provide solutions that come from within themselves. So the importance of media is basically to amplify Indigenous voices. That's how we use media, and to showcase the perspectives on our platform. We use material in different ways, depending on what is supposed to be evoked. So first we have our campaign and PR, where it's about highlighting Indigenous voices and their perspectives. The tone is serious. There's room for space for complexity. There's no sugarcoating. There's a call for responsibility to policymakers and businesses, and as well as Swiss citizens. As an example, I would like to show an extract from our most recent film we produced in collaboration with the associations of the Munduruku and Tupinamba from the Lower Tapajos, where we tried to highlight their perspectives.
So we're gonna watch a minute or two of this new movie.
Mm-hmm.
Manter a floresta em pé, manter os nossos rios vivos, é manter a nossa vida e a vida dos nossos filhos, a vida dos nossos netos, é manter a vida do planeta.
Porque a floresta, nós preservamos elas porque nós sobrevivemos dela.
Para nós, o Tapajós ele é sagrado, né? A gente tem o dever de proteger todo o Tapajós.
Nós, povos indígenas aqui do Tapajós, nós somos ameaçados por essas grandes infraestruturas que estão tentando implementar dentro do território.
Essa região do oeste do Pará é o foco de todo e qualquer grande empreendimento.
Do ferrogrão, portos, mineração, usina hidrelétrica, hidrovia. Vários projetos para o Tapajós, que vai ser transportados para a Ásia, né, para a Europa, né, para os Estados Unidos. E esse banco que financia esses projetos, elas também matam. E ela mata muito.
A soja, que é o que mais desmata com a pecuária no Brasil, é para alimentar porco na China. O que pesa nessa balança, a vida de um porco ou a vida de um indígena?
Então, para nós, esses projetos é um projeto de morte do governo. Porque o desenvolvimento para nós é nós ter água limpa, nós ter a floresta em pé, mas eles não estão se importando com a população que vive aqui.
E esses projetos grandes, a gente vai perder tudo, a cultura, a língua, o nosso costume. Eu não sei como é que a futura geração vai sobreviver daqui a um tempo. Porque todo mundo vive, respira através da floresta. Se nós não ter floresta, todo mundo vai morrer.
A gente não pode abaixar a cabeça, a gente tem que levantar e dizer assim, olha, nós estamos aqui sim, nós estamos bem aqui e nós vamos falar.
Eleni, I like to ask you, with whom did you work to create this film? Because I think that's really important. It has changed
Absolutely.
a lot during the past few years.
So it's the for us, it's the first time that we produced film and photos as big as this project. We worked together with a Brazilian filmmaker, Thomas Pedro, who previously produced a film about the Tupinambá demarcation, and we started talking about how we wanted to highlight Indigenous voices, and he already had a very good connection with the Tupinambá due to his previous work with them. And yes, so this is the first time we actually worked with a Brazilian filmmaker. Yeah. So, but what I also wanted to mention is how we use photos. That's like the campaigning side, where we where it's about hard facts, about the reality of things, where we don't sugarcoat the issue. And then there's the fundraising side, where I'm mainly active in, where we use storytelling that is less complex, because we cannot expect Swiss citizens who have probably never been to Brazil or to the Amazon to understand the complexity of the issue. So it's my job as a fundraiser to connect the people and to give them an opportunity to help. We tried in that type of communication when it comes to fundraising. I try to stay away from the pity images and turn to more positive images that show the beauty of Indigenous cultures and the positive force that they have in their fight against the violators of their rights. Yeah. And if you want to know more, would you like to know more about the origin of the pictures we use? So like I said, the film project was the first project that we did with a local photographer. But usually we don't have a big archive of pictures. So sometimes we even buy pictures from like databases such as, I don't know, Getty Images, etc. And since working with these, what I find a very lovely development is that we receive photos and material from the communities themselves. The technological development has broken through into the communities, which gives them power to document their projects, their activities, and gives them an opportunity to shape the narrative of their struggle. Yeah, that's how we get our photos.
This is something we will speak a bit more about in a minute, because this is also a big topic. It's very important. Let's hear from Niklas Ennen from Survival International, what kind of imagery they use and what kind of changes they have experienced in the past few years, since there's so much happening right now. Niklas, tell us about your work.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for organizing this very important discussion and inviting us. And I think regarding picture usage, the truth is, especially when working with media, is that you need good photos and good visual material to get news outlets to cover your story. And therefore, we really rely heavily on good pictures which draw attention to the specific issues of Indigenous peoples and their fight for the land. And I would say that we don't use pictures for the sake of just having a pretty picture. It's always supposed to convey some kind of message and be supplementary to the message we or Indigenous peoples are trying to get across. And often these visuals, should help to exemplify and convey the message. So for example, if we have a satellite picture of the deforestation around Indigenous territory, so we can see that the land is being destroyed around the territory, but the territory is still like an island in the forest, that is a really powerful image which quickly gets the message across what is happening, who is being threatened, and who is protecting the forest and who isn't. And so I would basically say that is the media side on which we do rely heavily on these motives, which you have alluded to, burning forests, deforestations, or also destruction of gold miners in the Amazon, because these pictures really show what we are trying to say. And then there's also more of our internal pictures we produce in our material, where we really try to show indigenous communities in their everyday life. We don't try to use any staged pictures. We want authentic pictures which actually showcase how the life looks and how the life of indigenous peoples nowadays appears. And Matthias, if you could maybe show the picture of the Yanomami to showcase how we do that, just to give one example, we basically have a scene of the Yanomami with doing one of the rituals, and then we accompany that with a quote of that community. You have to keep in mind that for us at Survival International, it's really important that we do not want to speak for indigenous people or tribal peoples, but we want to give them a platform for them to speak to the world. So we are trying to use these quotes to not put anything in their mouth which they didn't say, but rather give them a platform or distribute their own content to the world, so people are becoming aware of their issues and can support them in their fight.
And you sent another photo of a previous campaign, and I think I really appreciate that you sent this. Switch to the photo now. Okay, now it doesn't let me. This one, because I like that you say, okay, this is you would not use anymore, and so instead you use this one. Can you comment on this photo? Because I'm sure that many of us have seen similar photos of communities that have not yet been contacted. And so this is still happening, and we will probably, I mean, there are probably many more communities out there. So what is not ideal with this type of imagery, Niklas?
Thanks for bringing up this very important topic. So just to be clear, we're still using this picture, and I just want to make clear that it's a picture we only use because of specific reasons, so to say. So the issues with this is that these are uncontacted people, so they did not agree to this picture being taken or we using that picture, which itself is problematic. But the reason we still use this picture is that it's, as I said, there are no other pictures of these uncontacted tribes, and it's really important to showcase the threats they are facing. For example, up until the 70s or 80s, there was still discussion about if there are actually any uncontacted tribes in the Amazon rainforest, and invaders wanted to grab the land and steal the land, and we wanted to show the existence of these uncontacted tribes because we thought it would be in the best interest of these peoples for us to make the world aware of their existence so they could continue living their lives as they wish to. But yeah, the first issue is that they did not agree to them being pictured. And also it is somewhat of an intrusive picture. Basically, you can see that they are showing reactions of, kind of defending themselves or wanting to scare away the helicopter in that case, or the airplane. So that's another issue, that it's a somewhat intrusive picture, which we would not use if it wasn't for the specific case of the uncontacted tribes.
That's great, and you just to get this connection back to the Photo Museum, you will also see a movie by a Yanomami filmmaker who Morsaniel Iramai, that's his name, in the exhibition, and there you can learn much more about the Yanomami specifically. So just to plug the exhibition once more. One thing I noticed between, I'm gonna stop screen sharing again. One thing I noticed, so Niklas, you are in the press department and Eleni is in the fundraising department. What would you say are the major differences? Because many people maybe don't know the internal structure of these organizations, as I don't. So what are the differences between your tasks? You can continue, Niklas.
Sure. As Eleni has alluded to in the fundraising side, I think it's a bit of or it might be a bit of a different strategy, doing the storytelling and trying to convey the message in a different way. And maybe on the media side, you have to do you have to use some more graphic and more emotional, or like pictures really grab the reader's attention or the viewer's attention. And that might not be the case as much in fundraising, but maybe Eleni can chime in and give your perspective on that issue.
Yes. Well, like I said before, I feel like the main difference is in the level of complexity. So as I said, I have to break down the complexities to convey to everyday citizens. So they will donate, and the donation is for a reason. It's not, it's for the cause. And I use images to evoke emotions because donating is an emotional act. But it's important to consider that these images they're never isolated, and they're always contextualized through text, through quotes from members of the community, through comments from our campaigners. And we are very close, but still use, a different language, I would say. PR is more about reaching the mass, I guess, and creating pressure to decision makers on policy levels in businesses to get them to act. And fundraising is maybe more on an individual level. We want to reach those people who believe in the cause, who want to support the cause, to make a donation. Yeah.
Excellent. So I guess for Kelly, for Media India, this is a bit different because you're a news collective. What kind of image strategies and narratives do you use? You presented the different formats, different people who present different aspects of the culture and the movement. How does your production usually work? So you said it's 10 journalists, right? How do you work together to create these specific contents? Can you tell us more about how you produce the images, Kelly?
Thank you. So once again, we have a team, and each member of the team has differences. But we have the same common interests. So we have the person who takes the picture, some other member of the team, they work on the creation and the image making, and it's something that comes out of the consensus within the group. We share the information, and within this information sharing, regarding and depending on the topic, we're going to choose a given image to be able to convey, to depict what is in the topic that we want to express. As Niklas said, you have the topic which involve, and then you have to connect the topic with the image. I mean, it is pointless really to say something about the indigenous struggle and just to put an image of myself. It is not myself only working on that. It's not just me on this struggle. We have to really show the indigenous people in the struggle. So we look for a topic and something of an image which is going to be related to that topic, because this is going to call the attention, so people to be able to have this interest, to feel attracted to follow what it is really happening.
And what are as non-Indigenous people, and even for me, for example, non-Brazilian people, I can learn a lot about different aspects of the culture and the movement. But what do you think, or what kind of problems do you experience in the communication with non-Indigenous and even maybe non-Brazilian people? Where do you see problems where you have to adjust things? Have you made any of these experiences?
Yes, quite a lot. We do face lots of difficulties in the language we use due to some terms, some words which are obsolete, like Indian. We don't use Indian anymore, but indigenous. The tribe, the word tribe, we don't use that anymore. We have the communities, we have the territories, we have the villages. So sometimes the dialogue has to do with the right choice of words, where we have to focus on some given term, some given word is to fixate on the mind of people that some words we used to use, they are obsolete. We don't use them anymore. They're in the past. Yesterday we had a discussion on our own name. Since we don't have this word Indian anymore, why do we call ourselves Media India, which is the Indian media? So there is a whole meaning on this brand. Why is Media India and not Media Indigena, which is indigenous media? So we have to explain that as indigenous people, yes, we can use Indian, but with the meanings which really convey the understanding of the population without judging. From the pre-colonial time and so forth.
Maybe I like to add, I have another question regarding that, because what Matthias said earlier is also that we are like sort of actively trying to unlearn in terms of what we know visually. And the same goes, like you say, Kelly, like with language. I think it's also the beauty that it can actually change. And I was wondering, do you have images maybe of past formats or sort of campaigns you did, or like sort of projects which were broadcasted, which were very successful, or sort of particular images which gained a lot of attention? And maybe images you were also proud of them being circulated through social media channels and other outlets.
Yes, we do have several images where we show how this works, especially after the parade or the protest of indigenous women. We had a huge gathering where we also showed that women can also occupy the space, and they also can be present. This is one of the images I am referring to, showing both the culture, the painting, the body painting, the accessories, really showing the struggle of the people. And here we have women, indigenous women, warriors. And today we also feel prejudgment, really, prejudice really against women. And so these images they are a glimmer of hope for us. For me, as a woman, as an indigenous woman, it is so good, it is so cool to show this. Yes, women, we do have the right to occupy these agendas and these spaces as men do. In our territories nowadays, we have some chiefs who are women. We have also transsexual, transgender leaders of indigenous people. So through these images, we managed to convey this idea of a struggle and what we convey in the social media.
Thank you. This is new images to learn, new images to cement into our heads. Niklas, for instance, do you also have problems or challenges to re-educate your public, your target audience with old stereotypes, and how can you feed new stereotypes, or not stereotypes, new images into your target audience?
Yes, thank you. I think stereotypes are still a big issue, even for our followers and for the general public. And I think images like the ones which were used, I know, in the 80s, which showed or portrayed starving children and basically passive victims, or made passive victims out of indigenous peoples. Those are the pictures I think we need to unlearn and understand that tribal peoples or indigenous communities are active in themselves, and they're not reliant on some kind of help from Western societies. But on the other hand, they are very self-reliant. They live a good life when their land rights are protected and their livelihoods can continue the way they used to. And the threatening really comes from the Western society and our lifestyle and our greed for resources, which then in turn destroys their land. So we try to show them not just in an non-altered way and in the situations or in situations as they live right now. And this is often quite the colorful good life and not pure suffering. And when it is leads to these very bad situations where a person is actually malnutritioned or is suffering or is ill, then it's always linked to one specific threat which we might want to highlight. But we just generally, for like looking for donations, we would never use a picture of an Indigenous person who is in a victimized depiction, you could say. And we, I think, used to use these pictures on occasion for specific campaigns, but we tried to go away from that and only use those kind of pictures in context. To give you one example, I think in 2015 there was a situation in the northern Brazilian Amazon of the Awa people, and there were some uncontacted Awas who were getting in contact with the mainstream society. And a couple months later, one person, I think her name was Yakaweri, she got really, really ill. And we used one picture from her from 5 or 4 months ago, where she was looking healthy and good. And then we showed another picture of her, how she looked after she was being contacted. And in that sense, you could see that she was really slim and she was very, very ill. And in that sense, we used those pictures to showcase this specific danger the contact can have for uncontacted people. But generally speaking, we refrain from using these pictures because they reproduce the stereotypes of Indigenous peoples or people from the global south as being helpless, as being primitive, as being not able to help themselves, which is clearly not true.
And so Kelly is working with her co-fighters and they portray their own life and their own struggle. Where do you get your pictures from, Niklas and Eleni?
If I may start, we often have field trips, or we have researchers in our organization who actually go to the Indigenous communities and spend time there to research their issues, to talk to them and ask them what they need and what they want. So on these field trips, often our own researchers take the pictures. So that's one source. Another source is Indigenous photographers themselves, who work with their communities and also organizations like, for example, Media India. We have collaborated with them before as well, because we think they are a great source and are well connected within their communities. And I think the last source we have is just photographers like Claudia Andujar, who have shown that they support the fight and are sensitive when it comes to taking the pictures and using these pictures. And that is basically, I would say, the 3 main sources for our pictures, even though I would say that probably 50% of our pictures are actually taken by people from our own organization.
Maybe I like to, sort of enforce this idea of the question I always have when I look at images, no matter if they're circulating because of media coverage or because an NGO is sending me their leaflet, is always the question like, how can we assure that the people being shown, the depicted people, are actually agreeing to the use of images and their circulation? Because I know that the language is, because we talked about it before, a Western privileged researcher, no matter how well educated, won't maybe be not sufficiently capable of understanding everything before taking an image, taking a photograph. And this is something very particular. And I would be interested in knowing how you deal with that challenge. Maybe Eleni, because we spoke very briefly about that beforehand. Maybe you can let us know.
So I think the key word here is consent. and transparency. Like when we produced the material for the film, we had a process in place that ensured that the associations were informed, that they agreed to the project, that we explained what we wanted to do with the project. That is vital, and that is what builds trust and authenticity. Exactly. So we thought about, when we made the film, we thought about what we wanted to convey. We talked to the associations, we pulled up an agreement. So it's a constant forth and back until we find a common ground. So yeah, consent, and transparency.
Thank you. I would like to address, before we come to maybe one or two last questions, I would also like to let you know, our audience, that there is obviously the possibility to ask questions, and you can either send them to Matthias or to me, and we will try and maybe put them together, combine them for the last part of the conversation. It's just like a little mini info in between.
Yes, please do ask questions. And this also now is a perfect transition to, I think, the last bit of what we were interested in beforehand, the new technology and how it enables a shared agency, and it enables a communication. Because 20 years ago, Savard International and the Society for Threatened Peoples would have mail campaigns, and they would send out letters, and then you could read the letter and donate, or you could do whatever with it, but there was no direct way to immediately react to this campaign. And as we see now with Media India, the internet has provided the opportunity to form this grassroots organization and to give more people a voice. There are also 100 problems or 1,000 problems with social media and technology, but let's focus on the good part first. And so Kelly, I'm really interested in when did you start, or how did you start this Media India collective and your own personal work? Because you have a private, you have a personal, I want to share this really quick. You have a personal Instagram also, and you shared this photo. Where you posted this article from Correio Brasiliense, where it says Indigenous people become influencers to fight for the recognition of their lands, and they are on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter to also show their culture. And I find this really interesting because I've been following other Indigenous influencers, and I think this is such an extra part of being in touch and educating people, being in touch with your own community, but also people who want to learn more about it. Apart from traditional news or NGOs, and we can then in a second, after Kelly maybe answers, I would like to know from Niklas and Eleni how social media also influenced their work.
So it is very interesting how influencers are taking over social networks, not just Indigenous peoples, but other ones. We've tried to change the network, these networks, in a means of communication. After the pandemic, what people were using was stories, Instagram, TikTok, and we just dove in. We wanted to dive in and show our reality in these apps, in these networks, to really make the most and show what was happening. A lot of people were saying, you're an Indigenous person, you don't know how to use the apps. That is not true. We want to show that we have access to technology, we can do it, we can have a good smartphone to record videos, and we are actually showing how we live, so people are very curious about it. In TikTok, we've got a channel in Brazil. It's called Da Aldeia, from the tribe. It shows the stories to a lot of people. So it is a serious issue because people were saying, oh, a smartphone, so you grab it from the trees. So they were asking silly questions, but we are trying just to use humor to explain in an ironic way to certain people who are being ironic with us. So we are using social networks and we want to expand a bit more. So this is just the beginning of a lot of things we want to do. And we go to the streets as well. So we were protesting before. Now we are in social networks. And tomorrow, if there's something else, we want to be there, not just with photos and videos, but with whatever means of communication we can use. And we want to be ready for the future so we can interact and also have knowledge to really tell people as a whole, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, who we are and what we do.
And one thing I'm interested in, because I think I'm too old for TikTok and because I really don't understand TikTok, but on Instagram stories, I often see very private stories, influencers drinking coffee and going for a walk with their dog. And then the next story is a political fight and a really strong message and new threats from the Brazilian government. So it really oscillates between personal life and a political fight. And how do you experience this? How much of your personal life do you share? Because I understand it's important to say, I'm this individual who is affected by outside threats, but also you have to form maybe a more abstract version. I'm just interested in your personal stake in this.
Even though we are attacked not only by the government, but from people on the streets. People attack us. We try to live our lives just in a normal way. We need to go to work, we need to go to university to study and other things. So we try, apart from our fight, in addition to it, we want to show that we have lead normal lives like everyone else. My reality in a town can be the same reality in my territory, my peoples, my original area. So we try to show that we can adapt to any place. Is not because I'm an Indigenous person that I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to do a rain dance like people think. I've been through this kind of stereotypes. I faced that. I teach dance. Now I am learning physical education, and in my discipline, people say, oh, let's put Kelly to dance because she's going to perform a rain dance. So there's all this context in which we need to dialogue and explain to people and use a language that people can understand, that the rain dance is not something that I'm just going to present to people. It's a ritual and it has meaning, there's a context to it for it to take place. So we try to show our reality, the reality of our lives in town, in the cities, but also when we are with our original people in our original territory, and saying that we can transit between the two.
Thank you very much, Kelly, Eleni, and Niklas. I would like to start gathering up some of the questions we got. And there is one which is actually also still part of our list, and it's regarding sort of the circulation backwards. And it's by Bettina Willer. She's asking, has any of the speakers ever gotten any feedback from the photographed people or other members of their communities commenting or even complaining about the photos in their final use? Because she feels like it is often a rather one-way situation where people might agree maybe to the photo, but then never see the actual final product. And I think obviously it's a very complex question, and also it depends on where the digital communities are based, or also how they're in contact with either the journalists in Kelly's case, or the producers in Kelly's case, or Eleni and Niklas regarding their work. But yeah, did you ever get complaints or people feeling uncomfortable because they couldn't see the final product? Or is it an effort you were trying to do that you actually make it accessible later on?
Absolutely. If I can interfere, it's very important to make the content accessible. That means translating the text, consulting in the development of, let's say, like for our example, the film. Yeah, that the communities or the people who are depicted always have the right to that picture and to that image, and they can always say, I do not want that image to be used at any time. We haven't, not that I know of, have ever received like negative feedback. The response to the film by the communities was very, very positive. And I believe that's because we had a process in place that based on consent.
Yeah, it's pretty similar for us, I would say. I think the people taking the pictures, if they revisit the community, they often bring the materials we have produced with these pictures, for example, videos or flyers, to show these people who are pictured what we make out of these pictures. And I'm not personally aware of any complaints about that, but I'm sure there have been feedback and things we can improve on. I remember one story where we misused the picture, so to say, which was of a native from Australia, and I think in their methodology and their worldview, you're not supposed to talk or show dead people, and we had an obituary about a person who died, and we showed his picture, which was offensive to the community and to the people and the family, and therefore we took the picture down. And this would be one example I could come up with where the people themselves told us, hey, the way you're using the picture is not okay, please alter that.
Thank you very much. I have another question by Maya Cusperti, and she's specifically asking Eleni and Niklas about collaborations with Indigenous artists, like about your experiences, if you had them, because I gathered you did, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on, maybe how that looked like and how it worked.
So far, we haven't been able to collaborate with Indigenous photographers and filmmakers. We do have, as far as I know, to my knowledge, our communications department is in contact with Media India and other Indigenous news outlets or content producers. Like I said, the film we produced is like a first for us. It's a huge project, a big step that we hired a Brazilian filmmaker. And I hope that in the future we will also be able to collaborate with Indigenous filmmakers, because there are a lot of them out there, and it's not, it doesn't cost us a lot to try to contact them and establish a relationship. Definitely, we will put the effort into, build relationships in that way.
Sorry. Yes, we have worked with Indigenous artists and especially filmmakers quite often before. And just one example would be the movie Bird Watchers, which we produced together with an Indigenous filmmaker, and which also included Indigenous people in the movie. And I think that is a collaboration which is really, really important to us, because as we are trying to not superimpose some opinions or some wording onto these communities, it's really important to let their skills and their leaders really produce this kind of content. And we, as Survival, really see ourselves as a helping hand in that process. We are happy to provide training or technological assistance, but in the end, the product which we are redistributing is, in the perfect world, produced by these communities who are trying to get their message across to the world.
And I have one question regarding this for Kelly. I asked you this also before. Do you collaborate with non-Indigenous news outlets in Brazil, and does that affect what kind of content you produce? Or how does the collaboration look like for Media India?
So, in the majority of the times, it is hard to dialogue with them because we want people to understand that before you should post something, before you try to describe an image, it's difficult to dialogue and explain to them to start with. Some people ask us, they ask what's the correct terminology, if you can use that image, if that really is going to offend somebody or is going to damage someone. So some people are concerned. They do contact us and they clarify their queries. Even for the person themselves, they want to know, but it's hard sometimes. Sometimes we see something in the media and say, why? My God, why did they post that? Or why did they upload that on their website? So why do they describe that way? So our main difficulty is that one. And it will always be like this. It's hard for people to understand what we mean, our words, what our daily lives are like. So this will always be quite challenging.
But we are really happy that we now know where to go and where to find the information and learn about cooking and art and the movement. So thank you very much, Kelly, for joining us. And Nadine, you also have some words.
Yes, I would like, because I learned something I think very important when Davi and Dario Kopenava were in Switzerland visiting Photo Museum. It was a great experience for the museum's crew because there were a lot of Portuguese speaking guests, and all of a sudden I couldn't understand a single word. So the museum was filled with a lot of people who haven't visited the museum before, which was amazing. And both Davi and Dario, they sort of sent a message out before before people left. And I would like to invite our guests. Maybe you have something to take with us on our way in dealing with images regarding Indigenous communities. Do you have something you would like to let us know? Some sort of like few sentences for us to take with us?
Each one, Nadine, or?
Yes, maybe okay. Each one. Maybe we can start with Eleni and take it from there. Maybe also, maybe, or like a wish, a wish for the future.
Okay, yes. What I wish is it more targeted towards organizations working internationally who do fundraising. My wish also as a person who is somewhat affected by the stereotypes these organizations produce in Switzerland is that they take a good look at their communication fundraising style, that they analyze their blind spots, and that they commit to doing better. But that they also seek ways to hire local and Indigenous photographers, which is a crucial step. Yes.
Thank you, Eleni, very much. Maybe Niklas?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think, yeah, picture usage and picture production is a lot about, yeah, mutual respect and also understanding, yeah, each other and really meeting on the same level and not having any kind of hierarchy or some kind of power mechanism in there. Because I think it's really easy for Western individuals or also for organizations to not really listen to the subject or to the indigenous communities, but yeah, influence the messaging with their own opinion. And I think that's quite dangerous. And if we really want to present a counter narrative, I think that's what it's really about, because indigenous people really have super important insights from which we as a Western society can learn. And we really should, yeah, be respectful and maybe take ourselves back a bit and listen a bit more to really understand and have a mutual understanding of each other's positions and wishes.
Thank you, Niklas. Kelly, would you like to take up the last part? What is your wish for the future?
I wish that we are heard, we are seen, we are heard, and that we are able to save our territories and recover those that have been grabbed. And we say at Media India that we want to be the voice of Indigenous peoples for ourselves, for our ancestors and for our future generations. So this is what we wish for. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking part, for being present. And yes, thank you, Matthias.
And thank you, Deborah Jobanian and Maria Barrera Plasencia, and also Felix Jäcki from Interlingua Anstalt in Liechtenstein for helping with the language. My wish is that we can have more multi-language events because they're more inclusive, and I hope we've learned from each other today.
Have a very good day. It's a morning in Brazil. It's a afternoon in Switzerland. I don't know what time it is where Eleni is right now.
It's lunchtime.
Okay. Yeah, have a good part of the day wherever you are, and thank you a lot for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Goodbye. Thank you all. It was really nice to hear and listen to your stories.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.
And there they go very fast. Yeah, thank you again in this smaller round. Time flies. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been double the length. It's crazy.
I could have spoken all afternoon.
Yeah. I hope the setting was all right. I had the impression that it was okay with translation. Was it okay also for Kelly? Because yeah, we were the ones being translated.
It was perfect.
Okay.
It was perfect.
Okay, thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you again as well for me. I think it's a very important discussion, and yeah, I learned something today, which is great. So thank you so much for organizing this event.
And stay in touch with each other, Brazil and Switzerland and Germany.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good day.
Great. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.